when a heavy armored Maybach slid off the freezing highway and crashed outside the quiet diner with nobody watching in the dark. You might assume, like Caleb did, just another careless rich driver. But as three armed men exited a trailing SUV with sussed rifles, a true unseen moral test began. His neck hairs immediately stood straight up. These men definitely weren't stepping up to help the trapped woman. They were there to finish a deadly job. He owed her nothing, yet that familiar icy calm from his Navy SEAL days completely took over. He glanced at his 6-year-old daughter sleeping nearby, tucked his apron away and grabbed a heavy iron coffee pot, choosing the hard, unseen right. Someone was about to make a truly fatal mistake. Seattle rain poured for 3 days, washing the diner's neon glow into a blurred, bloody smear across the cold, unseen street. Caleb wiped the counter. No applause, no cameras, just the faint smell of bleach and old coffee. At 34, his face carried the hard, weathered lines of someone who had seen far too much sand and blood, and too many fallen friends loaded onto C-17 transport planes in flag-draped boxes. After 12 harsh years serving inside Naval Special Warfare Development Group, he traded his combat rifle for a spatula just to be dad. His daughter Lily slept silently in the corner, her small chest moving under a faded old denim jacket. Severe childhood asthma plagued her, and the costly medications were completely burying him in debt. This invisible night shift barely paid the rent for their tiny one-bedroom apartment, let alone the needed inhalers and medical specialists. Then the door chime rang, slicing right through the low hum of the refrigerator. Caleb didn't even look up immediately. "Look closely here with me." He expected drifters, but the heavy synchronized thud of tactical boots made him freeze completely. 3 heavily armed men entered. Wearing dark rain gear, Caleb's seasoned eyes instantly recognized the thick bulk of Kevlar armor underneath. He watched them perfectly spread out, one securing the exit, another slipping into the shadows, while the confident leader advanced straight into the open room. They scanned everything like trained mercenaries, and hidden deep beneath the leader's dark raincoat rested the unmistakable outline of a silenced compact submachine gun. A split second later, the door violently flew open again. A soaking wet woman desperately wheeled herself inside, wildly gasping for air. Her ultralight titanium wheelchair was premium, though thick, heavy mud entirely jammed up the wheels. She wore an expensive tailored jacket, completely ruined by rain. Her striking blue eyes frantically searched the quiet diner before locking directly onto the armed hitmen. "Victoria Sterling," the leader muttered. His gravelly voice barely reached past the heavy pouring rain. "End of the line. The boss says it's time to cash out." Her jaw clenched tight, no screaming, no begging for mercy. She simply offered a terrifying, unyielding glare of pure aristocratic defiance. "Preston sent you," she declared, her voice impressively steady despite her violently shaking, cold shoulders. "He's cheaper than I thought, hiring local muscle instead of doing it himself." "Nothing local about us, ma'am," the ruthless assassin smirked, slowly raising his weapon. Caleb's mind instantly shifted into hyper-focus military overdrive. Time froze completely. 3 armored targets holding heavy tactical weapons. You and I know true character, risking everything unseen with just a coffee pot and a 6-inch steak knife. You and I know doing the right thing carries risk. Lily sat 15 feet away, but a stray bullet through those boots remained totally lethal. "Listen closely. Doing what's right means zero hesitation, only action. Hey." Caleb barked, stepping right out from behind the protective counter. The armed leader instinctively snapped his head toward the sudden shout. That unselfish split second was all Caleb really needed. With a vicious, practiced motion, he hurled a boiling hot glass coffee pot straight into the strike team leader's face. It shattered hard against his cheekbone, sending scalding hot coffee and jagged glass right across his unexpecting eyes. The man screamed in agony, his finger yanking the trigger in a reflexive spasm. A suppressed thip-thip-thip tore through the ceiling tiles, raining white plaster down onto the diner counter. But Caleb was already moving. He vaulted that counter, clearing it with the raw, explosive power of a coiled spring. He landed squarely in front of the totally blinded strike leader, driving the heavy heel of his palm upward into the man's chin with absolute bone-crunching force. The thug's head violently snapped back, his lights went out instantly. As he crumpled down, the second man by the door quickly raised his pistol. Caleb grabbed the falling leader's submachine gun by its burning suppressor, ripping it completely from his limp grip. And he hurled that heavy weapon like a club, straight into the second-armed gunman's chest. It struck him incredibly hard, staggering the shooter backward against the glass door. Caleb closed the deadly distance in 2 strides. The gunman tried recovering, bringing his pistol to bear, but Caleb deflected the barrel outward with his left forearm, cleanly stepping right inside the man's guard. He instantly delivered a brutal, crushing knee straight into the attacker's groin, followed quickly by a sharp, twisting elbow strike directly to his temple. The second attacker dropped instantly like a heavy stone. The third armed man, positioned near the restrooms, had a perfectly clear shot. He leveled his weapon at Caleb. "Daddy!" Lily screamed out, violently jolted awake by the commotion. That sudden distraction proved completely fatal for the gunman. As his eyes flicked toward the child for a microsecond, a heavy ceramic mug, hurled with pinpoint accuracy by Victoria Sterling, caught him squarely in the throat. He gagged, immediately lowering his weapon for just a fraction of a second. Caleb closed the gap instantly, violently grabbing the attacker's gun hand. He twisted the wrist until a loud snap echoed through the diner and cleanly swept the man's legs right out from underneath him. As the man fell, Caleb delivered a highly precise open-handed strike right to his carotid artery. The whole diner fell completely dead silent, save for the rain lashing against the windows. The righteous act took exactly 7 seconds. Caleb finally stood, chest heaving slightly, his bare knuckles freshly bruised. "Watch what true kindness is." He kicked the weapons away and simply walked over to Victoria. She just stared at him, her chest rising and falling, blue eyes wide with a heavy mix of pure shock and intense calculation. "You're not a fry cook," she finally said, her voice trembling just slightly. "And you're not a local," Caleb replied, his tone totally flat. He just turned back to his daughter. "Lily, grab your backpack. We're leaving right now, before the cops get here." "Wait," Victoria suddenly said, grabbing his wrist. Her grip was actually surprisingly strong. "Who are you?" "Nobody," Caleb firmly said, gently pulling his hand right away. "Just a guy who really hates seeing blood on his diner floor." The resulting police investigation hit the local news, but the true details were heavily sanitized. A failed robbery at the highway diner. What do we make of this? No mention of silencers, body armor, or the fact they carried military-grade encrypted comms. Caleb recognized a cover-up. He chose right over reward anyway. "You and I know true character shines when unseen." He left his diner job hiding Lily in a cheap motel under a fake name, sleeping with a loaded Glock 19. 4 days later, a knock came. Always the unseen protector, Caleb had his weapon leveled before the second tap even echoed. He peered quietly through the peephole. Out in the pouring rain stood an old man in a custom Savile Row suit, clutching a sleek black umbrella. He looked exactly like an English butler who had foolishly wandered into a bad neighborhood. Caleb cracked the door an inch, the chain still firmly engaged. "Mr. Mitchell," the old man said, his voice crisp and British. "My name is Arthur Pendleton. I represent Miss Victoria Sterling. She would very much like to have a word with you." "Tell her I am busy," Caleb muttered, wanting no reward, shutting the door. "She expected you might say that," Arthur smoothly replied, sliding a thick cream envelope right through the narrow crack. "She also asked me to respectfully inform you that Dr. Eris Thorne at Seattle Children's Hospital just received a massive anonymous donation. Your daughter's medical debts have been paid off entirely. Furthermore, a trust was established to cover all of her future respiratory treatments." Caleb froze. Expecting no reward, he stared at the envelope, then Arthur, jaw clenched tight. "You people should not have dug into my life. When one is saved by a noble ghost, Mr. Mitchell, one naturally tends to search for the grave," Arthur replied calmly. "Miss Sterling is waiting in the car. Please, this is a matter of life and death, hers specifically." 10 minutes later, Caleb sat in the back of an armored black SUV. Victoria sat opposite him. "Let's look closer." In the harsh daylight, he spotted the dark circles under her eyes. That exhaustion was hidden by flawless makeup and a stiff posture of absolute authority. "Chief Petty Officer Caleb Mitchell," Victoria said, holding up a slim digital tablet. "Silver Star, 3 Bronze Stars with Valor, 12 long years in SEAL Team 6. Honorable discharge after an IED blast over in Syria left you with minor shrapnel scarring and, according to this file, severe survivor's guilt. You gave up everything for duty. You left the teams because your wife died while you were deployed, leaving you a single father. Caleb's eyes turned to ice. Stop talking right now, or I am getting out. Victoria lowered the tablet. I apologize. I truly do not mean to be callous. I am a woman who thrives on data, and right now I have a desperate lack of information regarding my own continued survival. She leaned forward slightly. I am the chief executive of Sterling Dynamics. We build advanced guidance systems for the United States Department of Defense. 6 months ago, I was involved in a terrible helicopter crash during a remote site visit in Alaska. The official report blamed a mechanical failure. It completely severed my spinal cord, trapping me in this wheelchair permanently. But it was no accident, it was cold-blooded sabotage. And the guys at the diner, Caleb asked. Private military contractors, specifically a black book outfit called Aegis Solutions. Highly trained and completely deniable. They were hired to finish the ugly job that helicopter crash started. Why? Because in exactly 2 weeks, Sterling Dynamics votes on a massive merger with a huge Chinese conglomerate. A shady merger that would essentially hand next-generation American defense tech straight to a foreign power. I am still the majority shareholder, and I am voting no. My Chief Operating Officer, Preston Hayes, is quietly orchestrating the deal. Let's look at the facts. If I die before the meeting, my shares vanish into a blind trust controlled by the board. The corporate merger goes through. Preston simply walks away with $1 billion. Victoria looked him in the eye. She needed real integrity. My security detail is compromised. Local police are bought. The FBI demands solid proof, and a ghost like Preston never leaves a single trace behind. I am entirely on my own, Mr. Mitchell. I need someone truly invisible. I left that world behind, Caleb murmured. My little girl is my only priority now. That is exactly why you must take my offer, Victoria pushed back. $2 million a year. That is my offer to run my personal security detail. You and Lily will live at my estate. It is a fortress. Private tutors, the absolute finest medical care, and a quiet life forever shielded from poverty. Your only job? Keep me breathing until the massive corporate board meeting in 14 days. Caleb stared through the rain-slicked window. $2 million, a heavy moral choice. Dirty money without question, but it secured a safe, warm future for his daughter. A quiet life where she would never wheeze through cold nights in a damp apartment. He turned back to her. If I do this, I work my way, total operational control. I vet everyone, I change your schedules, I dictate every single movement. If I say jump, you ask how high, do you understand? Victoria flashed a razor-thin smile. I am in a wheelchair, Caleb. I do not jump, then you roll, Caleb replied instantly, fast. The Sterling estate felt like a modernized medieval keep, sitting on a private peninsula overlooking Puget Sound. High concrete walls crowned with wrought iron hid advanced motion sensors and thermal security cameras. But as you and I watched Caleb drive through those massive gates, Lily sleeping beside him, his ever-protective mind instantly began cataloging the hidden flaws. The security guards working the main gate were careless and painfully heavy-footed. The camera angles left a massive, dangerous blind spot near the eastern seawall. Even worse, the guards broadcasted on totally unencrypted civilian communication bands. This was not just sloppy security, it was an open invitation for an assassination. Victoria greeted them out in the grand foyer. The interior was a stunning, beautiful display of glass, dark wood, and sleek modern art. Arthur stood nearby, holding a silver tray carrying warm hot chocolate just for Lily. Welcome to your new home, Lily, Victoria said softly, a quiet kindness Caleb had not expected. She rolled her wheelchair closer, dropping right down to eye level with the little girl. Arthur will gladly show you up to your room. It overlooks the ocean, and I made sure they stocked it with every art supply you could want. Shy but wide-eyed, Lily looked at her father. Caleb gave a slow, reassuring nod. Go right ahead, sweetie. I need to speak with Miss Sterling. Watch what happens next. Once they disappeared upstairs, Caleb turned to Victoria, his fatherly mask shifting to pure business. Your security detail is an absolute joke, Caleb stated flatly. Your perimeter guards are mere contractors from some discount firm. The cameras are completely misaligned. Whoever built this system actually wants you dead. Preston Hayes handpicked my head of security while I lay in the hospital, recovering from the crash. Victoria replied bitterly. His name is David Granger. Fire the man immediately, Caleb ordered. Right now, give me his severance papers, and I will deliver them myself. Listen, Caleb, if I fire him without cause, Preston will absolutely know I suspect him. That might accelerate his timeline. He just sent an Aegis hit squad to a diner. The timeline is already at 0, Caleb said firmly. He stepped toward the massive window overlooking the dark water. True character reveals itself here. Granger leaves today. I will bring in 2 men from my old unit, brothers I trust completely. You and I know doing what is right invites trouble. I secured the physical perimeter, needing to uncover how they tracked her to that diner anyway. Victoria just rubbed her temples and sighed. I used a burner phone. And I took a random pool car, not my personal corporate vehicle. Then your wheelchair is bugged, I told her. She blinked, staring down at those custom high-tech wheels. Preston had our engineering division custom build this exact chair, she whispered. I knelt right beside her. May I check? She nodded. I ran my hands under the titanium seat, feeling around the battery housing of her motorized assist. My fingers brushed a strange, tiny magnetic bump right by the rear axle. I pulled the device free, a hidden GPS microtransmitter barely the size of a dime. I held it to the light, military-grade active ping. Victoria went totally pale. He has been tracking my every move for 6 months. And now he knows we found it, I replied, crushing the transmitter under my heavy boot. Which means he knows you are completely done playing the victim. Doing what is right meant a week of intense tactical restructuring. I called in Jackson and Miller, 2 quiet former SEALs who instantly purged her estate of those compromised security guards. We built a secure operations center right down in the basement, setting up drone surveillance, biometric locks, and overlapping fields of fire. Yet despite the danger, a quiet, strange domestic rhythm formed. I spent daylight auditing her corporate cybersecurity and shadow trailing Victoria to every closed-door meeting. At night, I would always find Victoria inside the library, patiently helping my daughter Lily with math. Look closely with me. Beneath her cold armor, I saw someone fiercely determined to protect the innocent. She built an empire surrounded by ruthless men, and they literally broke her back for daring to succeed. Real kindness is unseen, and I admired her quiet resilience more than I admitted. On the 8th day, our shadow war finally went hot. Victoria had a mandatory corporate board meeting downtown at the Sterling Dynamics headquarters. It was unavoidable, so I demanded a 3-car Dartke convoy. She rode with me inside an armored transport van, heavily disguised as a plumbing truck. As we rolled down into the underground parking garage of Sterling Tower, the hairs on my arm stood straight up. The garage felt way too quiet, that attendant booth sat empty. Jackson, I muttered sharply into my throat mic. What does the thermal sweep look like? Pure static. Jackson. Report. But I heard nothing except a harsh jamming hiss. Hold on tight, I warned Victoria, throwing our heavy van straight into reverse. Before my tires even gripped the concrete, a massive explosion violently rocked the upper parking levels. Concrete dust rained down and the heavy steel security gates at the ramp top slammed shut. We were locked inside. Then, from the shadows of those lower levels, 4 black SUV headlights snapped on, blindingly illuminating our van. Caleb, Victoria whispered, white-knuckling the armrests of her wheelchair. Stay low, I growled, drawing my weapon. I slammed the gas pedal, driving right into those blinding headlights. We were boxed in, and as you might guess, the only way out was straight through. Our heavy Ford Transit van was retrofitted with B6-level ballistic steel and inch-thick polycarbonate glass. It roared like a beast as I slammed that accelerator flat to the floorboards. Those 4 black SUVs quickly fanned out, trying to form a solid steel barricade right at the base of the exit ramp. Brace yourself, Caleb roared over the sudden deafening storm of automatic gunfire. Sparks showered the dim garage as 5.56mm rounds chewed into the armored van's grille and skipped off the sloped windshield. Spiderweb fractures bloomed across the glass, but the heavy polycarbonate held strong. Caleb didn't even flinch. He gained nothing from this, yet his eyes locked on the narrowest gap beside the concrete pillar. Caleb, they're going to box us in, Victoria shouted. Her hands gripped the steel safety bars, welded beside her anchored wheelchair tightly. Despite the absolute chaos, her voice remained steady. Not if we keep moving, Caleb grunted. He entirely ignored the brakes. Instead, he downshifted. The engine hit a screaming crescendo as he threw the heavy wheel hard right. then violently left, executing a brutal pit maneuver using the armored van's massive weight. The heavy steel bumper caught the hostile SUV's rear quarter panel just as the trap snapped shut. The brutal impact sounded like a bomb detonating. The massive 2-ton vehicle spun violently on its axis. Tires screamed against the polished concrete before slamming side-on into the massive load-bearing pillar. Airbags deployed in a white cloud, totally neutralizing the driver and passenger in an instant. Caleb punched right through that opening. He took the van down to the sublevel at absolute breakneck speed. They locked the upper exits and they jammed our comms, the former SEAL stated calmly. Doing the right thing unseen, his eyes darted between mirrors and the concrete labyrinth ahead. 2 remaining SUVs were already recovering, headlights cutting through the dust, accelerating in relentless pursuit. We cannot go up, so we go down. Sublevel 5 is a dead end, Victoria warned, frantically pulling a rugged tablet from her briefcase. It's a maintenance bay for HVAC chillers. That is exactly what I need, Caleb replied. Under your seat, black Pelican case, pop it open. Victoria quickly unlatched the heavy waterproof case. Inside the custom-cut foam lay a compact Mk-18 assault rifle, completely outfitted with a holographic sight, a heavy suppressor and 4 fully loaded magazines. Do you even know how to use it? Caleb asked, sliding the armored van around a tight corner, the tires smoking. I manufacture the guidance systems for the Hellfire missile, Caleb. I know how a safety catch works, Victoria said coldly, loudly racking the charging handle with a sharp metallic clack. Good, do not shoot unless they actually breach the glass. Caleb hit the steep down ramp to sublevel 5. Let's follow them down. The lighting grew sparse, revealing massive humming industrial chillers that regulated the 70-story Sterling Dynamics tower right above them. The heavy armored van hit the bottom, skidding to a halt near a massive chain-link fence cordoning off the city's dark subterranean drainage and utility tunnels. Hold on tight, Caleb said. He never even slowed down. He aimed the armored van straight at the heavy chain-link gates. They violently crashed through the steel mesh, dragging the torn fencing beneath the chassis with a horrific screech. With nobody looking, Caleb killed the headlights, plunging them into the pitch-black utility tunnel. He quickly flicked a switch on the dashboard, activating the van's military-grade infrared front camera. The dashboard screen glowed green, instantly illuminating the damp, cavernous tunnel ahead. Pursuing headlights swept the bay behind them. You and I know genuine kindness never waits for applause. Stick with me. By the time those Aegis mercs realized, my van smashed the gates. I had already driven a quarter-mile deep into the subterranean dark, doing what's right in the shadows. 10 minutes later, I surfaced from a forgotten storm drain in the Soto Industrial District. We were miles away from the Sterling Tower. I steered the battered rig into an empty, abandoned shipping container yard, killing the engine inside a hollowed-out warehouse that smelled of rust and salt water. The heavy silence that followed was absolute, still ringing in our ears after the deafening roar of that ambush. I exhaled slowly, checking my pistol in the dark before facing Victoria. She was pale, knuckles white gripping the Mark 18, but she was totally unharmed. Are you hit? I asked softly. No, she breathed, lowering her rifle. She stared at the cracked bulletproof glass, then at me. You planned for the garage. I planned for everything, I said, quietly unclipping my heavy harness. Jack and Miller are blind right now, but they know their standing orders. They are moving Lily to the secondary safe house, a cabin near Snoqualmie Pass. She is safe, but we face a massive problem. Preston just tried to execute me in broad daylight at my own corporate headquarters. Victoria snapped, fierce anger finally replacing the shock in her eyes. He is desperate. Desperate men make mistakes, I said, grabbing a tactical flashlight and moving out back. I popped a secure locker, pulling out a hardened military laptop and a satellite uplink. But this just makes no sense. If he kills you today, the board demands a massive federal fraud investigation. It will delay the Chinese merger by several months, maybe even years. Why accelerate the timeline to 0? Victoria frowned, taking the laptop from me. Unless the corporate merger isn't his main goal, unless it's just smoke. She plugged her encrypted tablet into the rig, completely bypassing local cellular networks, using that satellite uplink to silently ping a ghost server she hid in Iceland. When I took over Sterling Dynamics, I quietly built a back door into the mainframe. Preston doesn't know about it, only Arthur does. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, complex code reflecting in her piercing blue eyes. You and I know the drill. I stood watch, rifle raised, guarding the perimeter. The Chinese conglomerate Jinmao Heavy Industries, Victoria softly muttered, slicing through thick layers of highly encrypted firewalls. Their initial bid was unusually high, almost 40% above market value for our defense contracts. I figured they just wanted the tech. She paused, her breath suddenly hitching. What is it? I asked, keeping my eyes locked on the rain-slick street outside. It's not a merger, Victoria whispered, her voice laced with pure, dark venom. It's a bailout, Caleb. Look at this. I stepped right back to the van. The screen showed a massive complex web of shady offshore wire transfers. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands, and dummy corporations hidden securely in Cyprus. Preston hasn't just been managing the company, Victoria explained, her voice trembling with absolute fury. He has been bleeding it dry. He's siphoned over $800 million from the defense budget over the last 4 years. The money is gone. You see the grim tactical reality here. If the quarterly audit happens next month, he gets exposed. Federal prison, treason charges. Exactly. But this Jinmao merger includes a complete waiver of historical audits, absorbing our debts during the acquisition. The foreign buyers do not care about the missing money. They only want those missile guidance blueprints. Preston gets his $1 billion payout. The missing funds stay buried in the acquisition paperwork, and he walks away completely clean. She slammed her fist against the armored van door. If I do the right thing and vote no today, the merger fails. The audit proceeds. Preston's entire corrupt life goes up in flames. He has to kill me today. The board vote happens in 2 hours. Caleb checked his watch, 1:15 p.m. He didn't have to help, but the 3 p.m. vote mattered. Then we must get you into that room, Caleb replied, his steadfast voice dropping an octave. Caleb, the Sterling Tower is an absolute fortress right now. Aegis mercenaries will guard every elevator and stairwell. We barely even escape the basement. We cannot just walk into the penthouse. Caleb offered a quiet, righteous predator's smile. He reached into his tactical vest, pulling out a corporate blueprint he had memorized just to help her. We don't walk, Caleb stated. We breach. You and I know true darkness hides behind the frosted glass, brushed steel, and acoustic paneling of the 65th floor. Inside the sweeping grand boardroom, 20 powerful corporate directors in the defense industry sat around a massive, polished mahogany table. The room's mood was somber, tense, and heavy with unspoken panic. At the head of the table stood Preston Hayes. Late 50s, perfectly groomed, wearing a custom charcoal suit that cost more than most family cars. He feigned deep devastation, though his dark eyes glittered with a suppressed, selfish triumph. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Preston began, his voice a literal masterclass in feigned sorrow. As of just 2 hours ago, local authorities informed me an explosion occurred down in our lower parking levels. While the details are still arriving, I must deliver the deeply tragic news that our CEO, Victoria Sterling, is completely missing and presumed dead in the attack. A sudden murmur of genuine shock rippled through the room. Police are investigating this as an act of corporate terrorism. Preston continued smoothly, raising a hand to silence the noise. In times of unprecedented crisis like this, stability remains our only shield. The market opens tomorrow, and if we fail to show definitive leadership immediately, our stock plummets, and our defense contracts will face immediate suspension by the Pentagon. He pressed a button on the table, projecting the Jinmao merger documents onto the massive high-definition screen right behind him. Under the continuity of leadership bylaws in the event of our CEO's incapacitation, the Chief Operating Officer assumes emergency proxy control of all voting shares. I am calling an immediate binding vote to finalize this hostile Jinmao acquisition. We must secure this company's future today. Let's watch what true justice looks like. Outside the boardroom, 4 armed mercenaries stood guard, completely unaware. They never even heard Caleb approaching. He bypassed the main elevators, quietly scaling the interior maintenance shaft directly from the 60th floor. He lifted Victoria's wheelchair upward, using a specialized tactical rigging pulley. Caleb had safely reached the executive level. Unseen, he chose right, moving like a shadow. Ever do the right thing for nothing? I slipped behind the first two guards. Moving with pure instinct, I grabbed the first guard's collar, yanking him backward while driving a hard knee into the second guy's spine. Before either man could reach for a weapon, I locked a tight blood choke on the first man, simultaneously throwing a brutal palm strike right into the second guard's temple. He dropped instantly. The last two guards by the boardroom doors grabbed for their guns. I didn't hesitate. I drew my silent sidearm, two fast, non-lethal rounds, but instantly incapacitating them, shattering the right shoulder of the guard on the left. The second shot blew right through the kneecap of the guard on the right. Both men collapsed in pure agony, their weapons dropping uselessly onto the thick carpet. I holstered my weapon and keyed the radio. All clear, bring her up. From the dark, Arthur Pendleton wheeled Victoria forward. He had bravely insisted on joining this dangerous infiltration to help her. Victoria calmly brushed a speck of dust off her ruined charcoal blazer. She looked exactly like a battered queen returning for her throne. Ready? I asked, resting my hand gently on the brass handles of the double doors. Kick them open, Victoria told me. Inside that boardroom, Preston was already passing around the signature pens. All in favor of the merger, please. Massive, thunderous crash. I kicked the heavy oak doors, sending them exploding inward with a massive, thunderous crack. Every single board member jumped straight out of their seats. I walked into the room first. I had nothing to gain, just a silenced weapon resting against my thigh. My eyes locked onto Preston, pinning the corrupt executive in place with a cold predator's stare. A second later, Arthur wheeled Victoria Sterling right into the center of the room. Believe me, the silence was absolute. It was the kind of silence that sucked the air right from Preston's lungs. Every drop of color left his face, making him look exactly like a brand new corpse. Victoria, Preston stammered, taking a step back and knocking his chair over. We thought you were dead. Not for lack of trying, Preston, Victoria replied, her strong voice echoing off the acoustic panels. She bravely wheeled herself directly to the head of the heavy table. Though your hired hitmen were surprisingly incompetent. Maybe you shouldn't have used embezzled funds. Right then, the entire board erupted into chaos. Hitmen, embezzled funds, what is the meaning of this? An older member demanded. Order, Victoria commanded. Arthur pulled a small flash drive from his pocket and slotted it into the boardroom console. The Ginmao merger documents immediately vanished from the screen, replaced instantly by encrypted business ledgers and shady offshore bank routing numbers, and undeniable proof of the $800 million theft. You are looking at the real reason Preston Hayes pushed for this merger, Victoria announced, projecting her voice clearly over the rising commotion. Jin Mao was not buying our technology, they were buying his debt. Preston has been quietly siphoning our research funds for 4 years. When I survived the helicopter crash he caused in Alaska, he knew his time was running out. So he hired Aegis Solutions to finish the job today. Preston's panicked eyes darted wildly around the room. I blocked the exit, wanting nothing in return. The evidence was undeniable. His custom suit suddenly looked exactly like a prison uniform. This is a complete fabrication, Preston shouted, his voice cracking with pure panic. She's unstable, the crash broke her mind, he screamed. He begged for security to step in, nobody came. Your security team is currently napping in the hallway, I said, keeping my voice low to chill the room. And federal agents are riding the elevators up to this floor. Arthur had made the call from the lobby. You could see it happen. Preston's slick executive mask shattered. Then Preston lunged, but not at Victoria. He went for a heavy crystal pitcher, desperate to smash the server console and destroy that flash drive for good. He didn't make it 2 steps before I crossed the room. Doing what's right is just reflex. I grabbed his wrist, twisting it into an agonizing hammerlock. He screamed as I slammed him face first into the mahogany table, pinning him there effortlessly. Do not move, I whispered right into his ear, pressing the barrel of my sidearm firmly against his lower back. Or I will make sure your only remaining merger is with the concrete floor below. He sobbed, cheek pressed hard against the wood, utterly broken. Down the hall, the elevator finally dinged. Heavy boots and the sharp commands of federal agents echoed our way. Victoria looked around the room at her stunned, dead, silent board. She adjusted her blazer, posture perfect, piercing blue eyes radiating absolute control again. "The merger with Jinmao is officially cancelled," she stated calmly. "And I believe we have a sudden vacancy for Chief Operating Officer." Meeting adjourned. 6 months later, Seattle's relentless rain gave way to a brilliant sunset over the Sterling estate. I stood out on the patio watching my daughter Lily sprint across the lawn, laughing and chasing Arthur's golden retriever. No wheezing anymore, no more asthma inhalers. Just the vibrant energy of a healthy kid whose medical future was completely secure. The $800 million was recovered. Preston faced life in federal prison without parole, and his corrupt company was dismantled by the Justice Department. Behind me, the soft whir of mechanical servos hummed. I turned to see Victoria stepping out onto the patio, out of her wheelchair, walking tall in an advanced lightweight titanium exoskeleton, the first prototype from her newly purged and fully funded research division. She walked slowly, proudly to my side. I smiled, offering my arm not as her security detail but as an equal. I stepped in, expecting nothing in return, but sharing this beautiful victory felt truly incredible. You and I know doing the right thing isn't about the payout. If this intense story kept you hooked, hit like. Share this video with anyone who loves seeing the ruthless get exactly what they deserve. And please do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more intense real-life drama stories. What would you have done if you were me? Drop a comment below.